In June last year, we reported the mystery surrounding the life and sudden death of an Australian, Christopher Harvard. He was a Muslim convert from Townsville, killed by a US drone strike in Yemen in 2013. He'd told his parents he was there teaching English, but the federal police believe he was involved in something much more sinister. Tonight, we can lift the veil of secrecy that shrouded this case, thanks to a Finnish couple and one single strand of hair. Jonathan Holmes reports.
What do you want from the Australian government?
The truth.
The truth.
When they talked to 7:30 last year, Christopher Harvard's parents were still deeply distressed.
So how can you move on?
Not just by the fact that their son had apparently been killed by a missile out of the blue, but by some startling allegations made to them by the Australian Federal Police. Christopher Harvard, they were told, had joined Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, or AQAP, a listed terrorist group that's been active in Yemen for more than a decade. AQAP gains much of its income from ransoming Western hostages, and Christopher Harvard stood accused of being involved in the trade. According to heavily redacted AFP documents released to 7:30 under the Freedom of Information Act,
Harvard was also allegedly involved in the kidnapping of an Austrian citizen and two Finnish citizens between December 2012 and May 2013 in Yemen.
his mother and stepfather didn't believe it.
Everything that the government is saying, it's all hearsay. There's never been 1 ounce of proof given to us by any department of the government to prove that he was or he was not a terrorist, because they don't want to.
But the AFP did have proof. It came from Helsinki, Finland, on the shores of the Baltic Sea. The AFP has been protecting the identities of the Finnish couple kidnapped in Yemen. But they're now public figures in Finland. I found Ate Kaleva campaigning for election to the Finnish parliament with the full support of his wife Leila.
When you experience this kind of experience what we had in Yemen, you really want to make a difference.
Ate Kaleva travelled to Yemen in 2012 to study radical Islam and to improve his Arabic. But just before Christmas, he and Leila were taken hostage at gunpoint in the middle of the capital, Sana'a. So I guess you both discovered rather more about radical Islam than you had bargained for.
Indeed.
You could say that, yes.
Their kidnappers sold them on to Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They were held for 4 months while their captors negotiated a multi-million-dollar ransom. In February 2013, their fellow captive, Austrian Dominik Neubauer, was forced at gunpoint to make a video appeal.
You give them what they want. Otherwise, they will kill me 7 days after this video is published.
The Kalevas have spoken very seldom about their ordeal, and never before to the Australian media.
But there were situations that we didn't really know if we are going to be killed or not. So, but yeah, it's very uncertain situation.
All they could do was to study their captors. Though their guards usually kept their faces covered, they couldn't disguise their voices. One in particular, they realized, certainly didn't come from Yemen.
Yeah, there was one person who was speaking English with a New Zealand or Australian accent, so it was very evident that he was not an Arab guy.
I was also able to see that the Aussie Kiwi guy had quite long hair, and also it wasn't completely black, it was sort of a chestnut or brownish.
Remarkably, it was a single one of those hairs that provided the proof that the man with the Aussie accent was Christopher Harvard.
There was a hair that we found between the pages of a book, so that book belonged to him, so we knew that it should have been his hair.
In May 2013, the Kalevas were set free, and they brought the hair with them.
We gave half to the Austrians and half to the Finnish authorities, and I should have known that the DNA is stuck in the part of the hair that's attached to your scalp. So the Austrians got the one with the DNA and the Finns got the one with zero DNA.
The Australian Federal Police documents take up the story.
A copy of the DNA profile was provided to the AFP on a police-to-police basis for comparison purposes. On 27 September 2013, the AFP confirmed that the DNA profile belonged to Christopher Harvard.
But how did a young man from Townsville end up as a hostage taker in Yemen? After a troubled adolescence, Christopher Harvard converted to Islam with his parents' permission in 2008. He was 22 years old.
It changed his whole life.
Yeah, it changed his whole life.
His outlook on life.
Yeah.
He'd give up the drinking.
He didn't.
And give up the smoking, everything. That's because he believed in what was in the Quran.
4 years later, unexpectedly, Harvard travelled to Yemen. He told his parents he was teaching English. But that's not what he was doing with Otter and Leila Kaleva. They're remarkably charitable about their Australian captor.
He was really pursuing to be a true and good Muslim. Of course, he had gotten into this jihadi mindset, and then, but apart from being a jihadist, in everyday business, he was quite polite and tried to be as nice as possible.
On October the 31st, 2013, a Queensland magistrate issued a warrant for Christopher Harvard's arrest. But he was still in Yemen. Just 3 weeks later, he was travelling in a car with 4 members of AQAP in a remote part of eastern Yemen. Somewhere above them was a Predator drone, operated by an American sitting in front of a screen in the United States. The AFP documents insist
Australian authorities had no prior awareness or knowledge of this operation.
How did you feel when you heard that he'd been killed by a missile from a Predator drone?
Actually, I felt sad that he was dead. I don't believe in the capital punishment. I would have liked to see him put to justice in a courtroom and then trialed and then probably found guilty, and then he would have served some time in jail. That's my idea of justice, not this indiscriminate punishment of killing people. Although I have to say that he wasn't a good person, so probably the world is a better place without him.